absolutely thrilled to be here with you today. And I can't wait for all the other exciting talks and connections that are going to be made today with the additional speakers and the wonderful people here that we get to meet. Before I begin, I just want to take a moment and really pause and reflect at the point in history where we are today. We're at a really interesting point right now where it's been nearly 100 years since women gained the right to vote, but we're just now really starting to see in many industries, technology included, that these industries are recognizing the mistreatment of women and girls that's been going on for centuries. And while a women's empowerment, social impact, and entrepreneurship conference is always a wonderful thing, I think that this conference is all the more relevant today. And I'd really like to thank the organizers of this conference, not only for the opportunity to speak with you today, but also for highlighting these issues and for allowing us to meet each other and to empower each other as we continue on our journeys. So there are so many incredible women and men in the audience today, and I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about how we might empower each other as we do continue along on our journeys. So I'll start today by sharing a little bit about myself, and my path, in hopes that I can share with you what I've learned and hopefully will help you as you continue along your journey. If I can just share a few things with you today, I'd really like to share that, the road to happiness and success, there's more than one path to get there, and that's something that I had to learn, and I'll share a little bit about that today with you. And that your unique passions and the things that you really care about, they're going to make you stand out as you're pursuing your dreams. And lastly, sometimes opportunities come by and they might not look like what you expected them to be. And so sometimes taking the risk and opening yourself up to those opportunities really leads to some incredible opportunities. So hopefully today I can share those themes with you, and I can also help you enjoy those twists and the turns, because they're inevitably going to come as we all pursue our careers. When I was a little girl growing up in the Midwest, I was ill often. And fortunately, they were just minor illnesses, but I was in and out of my pediatrician's office all the time, to the extent that I became pretty good friends with my pediatrician, Dr. Mortimer. Now, Dr. Mortimer was a fantastic pediatrician, and it wasn't just because he bribed me and all of his patients with lollipops and cherry-flavored medicine, but that definitely works if you're ever trying to get a 5-year-old to do something you need them to do. But what I remember about Dr. Mortimer's office was how he would diagnose me and how he would look into my ears. And I'd come in with ear pain, and he'd get his otoscope out, and he'd look into my ear and examine my eardrum. He'd pause for dramatic effect. Shaundra, I know what's causing your ear to hurt. What, Dr. Mortimer? What is it? What is it? Shaundra, you have a grasshopper in your ear. And that grasshopper is not supposed to be there. And you have to take this medicine so the grasshopper can go back to his home and you can feel better. Now, that only worked for a little bit. Fortunately, I didn't have the childhood habit of putting bugs or other things into my ears. But what I really remember from those interactions was not feeling afraid and possibly even looking forward to going to the doctor's office. So when I was asked when I was in first grade, what are you going to be when you grow up? I knew what I was going to be. I was going to be a grasshopper hunter, or maybe a doctor. So that was that. And when my 5-year-old stubborn self decided to put her mind to something, I just did it. And so I continued that dream, and I just decided when I was a little girl I was going to be a doctor, so I did. Now, I was fortunate that I really liked math. I enjoyed talking to and getting to know strangers. And then I really liked science. Even organic chemistry, I was that student. But I was going to become a doctor. And like many people, I knew that I really wanted to make a big impact in the world. But a little girl in South Dakota, I had no idea how I was going to do that. But I thought maybe I'll be a doctor and I can make the world a better place. If maybe I can't solve all the problems in the world, but I can definitely help my patients. And that'll be how I'll make an impact in the world. So in order to achieve that goal, I started doing what any good pre-medical student would be. I started checking all of the boxes for pre-medical applications. I did research, I volunteered in a hospital, I wrote a few papers, I spent time getting to know people and hearing about their experience as physicians. I was a biochemistry major, I studied chemistry, I really thrived in that. And those prerequisites were great. And they're prerequisites for a reason. They taught me the knowledge that I needed, and they taught me the academic stamina that would really sustain me through medical school. But when I think back about what made me an interesting applicant for medical school, it probably wasn't the fact that I checked all the boxes that all the other pre-medical students had also checked. It was the passion for medicine and for connecting with people that I had actually developed during some of my travels during the summer in between all those pre-medical classes that I was taking. So in college, I met my best friend, Jessica. And Jessica was a world traveler. And at that point, I hadn't been outside of the US. I had traveled to some of the national parks, but really hadn't had the opportunity to leave the country. So Jessica convinced me to go to Europe for the first time during one of our summers in college, and I was hooked. I loved learning about cultures. I loved trying to speak new languages, and I loved just trying to understand people and their different experiences around the world. So that next summer, I decided that I was going to go to the Philippines alone, and I was going to volunteer. And that next summer in the Philippines absolutely changed my life. I saw disparity, true and stunning poverty, for the very first time. Now, growing up in South Dakota, we do have areas, Native American reservations and the like, that are impoverished, but I had never in my life seen anything like this. These are some of the slums in Manila. Many of you who have traveled around the world have seen slums like this in nearly every developing country. And millions upon millions of people in the world live in situations like this. I visited a tuberculosis hospital that summer, and I met with a Filipino physician who was treating tuberculosis and had been doing so for decades in his community. And that's a disease that we hardly ever see in America anymore. I met a mother who was raising 9 children alone in a public bathroom in conditions worse than this, and was trying to nourish them on the water that her neighbors had cooked their rice in. I met young girls that were just a few years younger than me. And I was just really heartbroken at the differences and the opportunities that the world held for both of us. Here I was having the opportunity to travel abroad and to apply to medical school the next year, while they were thinking about if they should try and meet and marry a foreign man so they could move to the United States to escape the extreme poverty that they and their families had endured. And I was just incredibly motivated. I really felt the weight of the opportunities that I had been given. And I was just incredibly motivated to take that experience and to really further my education so that I would be able to help those in my community, but also those abroad. So I returned back to the US that fall, and I really struggled initially. I remember going to Target and I was stocking up on supplies before school was going to start again. And I remember going to the laundry detergent aisle and just standing there and thinking, there are 17 different brands of laundry detergent from which I can choose. And I could buy any of these if I wanted to. And how do I have, a college student have 17 different laundry detergents available to me? And I can come here 24 hours a day and it's always going to be here. And the wonderful people with whom I had spent the summer were living on rice water. I just really, really struggled. I felt helpless. I almost felt despair, and I really struggled with how I, as one person, could really make an impact in the world. And so I decided, how am I going to help those people? How am I going to give back to communities around the globe? I have to keep furthering my education. So I put that sense of helplessness and that sense of despair back into my education and continued to study really hard. And had really found this incredible purpose that was beyond that sense that I had gotten when I was a child about why I wanted to be a doctor. So, I applied to medical school, and during my medical school interviews, I'll tell you the questions that they did not ask me. They did not ask me about valence electrons. They did not care about my understanding of fluid dynamics or lack thereof. What my interviewers really wanted to know was why I wanted to be a doctor, why I wanted to be a healer, why I thought that I would be good at it, and how I thought that I could actually change the world. And so I shared with them how I felt when I was in the Philippines and what I saw. And I shared with them why I felt that becoming a healer was the unique way that I was going to be able to give back to the world. And really the only way that I knew that I could help, the people that I saw there and try and empower even those young women that I met when I was there. I had been given this incredible opportunity to have an education, to get to go to a good school, and get to apply to wonderful medical schools. And I really wanted to be able to impact everyone that I was going to be able to treat in the future. And I was lucky enough to get into Stanford for medical school, and I found it an incredibly fostering environment while I was there. I learned more than I ever could have imagined that you can learn in 4 years. But I really couldn't shake that experience that I had in the Philippines. And frankly, I didn't really want to. I continued to return to the Philippines in between quarters, and during medical school, I really struggled trying to find the right specialty that would combine my love of travel, connecting with people, and medicine. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to become a surgeon. This is the perfect way for me to be able to have a really challenging career here in the States, but also to be able to make an impact abroad. So what did I do? I went about trying to check all those boxes to become the perfect surgical applicant. And I started doing that. I went to departmental educational meetings. I spent extra time on surgical rotations. I tried to learn as much as I could. And when I applied, I was very fortunate. I was incredibly lucky to be able to get a spot in the plastic surgery residency at Stanford. Things started off wonderfully. I felt so incredibly fortunate to have this really competitive position. I was surrounded by incredible physicians and really amazingly talented surgeons. Just really passionate people who were really the best of their craft in the country. And I had found my dream career. I felt like, you know what, I'm going to be operating until I'm 75 years old and my hands are no longer steady. I'm going to be doing, this is my track, I'm going to be on this exact path for the rest of my life. I had answered the question, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I was marching along on that path. And that was all well and good for a few years, until 2 years into my surgical residency program, I realized that I actually wasn't that happy. I really respected and admired the people around me, and I thought what we were doing was important and valuable work. But turns out, you know what? I actually prefer for my patients to be awake, which is kind of a funny thing to recognize 2 years into your surgical training program. So I did something kind of crazy, and I left my surgical residency. And I remember thinking, what am I thinking? I had this incredibly competitive position, and it's a wonderful opportunity, but it really didn't feel right. So I left, and I moved up to San Francisco, and I started working at UCSF, still seeing patients in their surgery department, but I was really trying to figure out what my next step would be. And I didn't really know that this amazing opportunity would come by, because it just didn't really seem like that. I ended up meeting one of my colleagues at Stanford, ended up introducing me to an investor in the healthcare space, who in turn introduced me to the co-founders of a new digital health company. I met with them. They were a really small company, and they were building a platform for patients to be able to connect with physicians across the country if they weren't able to visit them. And I thought, you know what, I have some spare time. This seems interesting. They seem like a really nice team. Why don't I try and just see if I can help them? So I started consulting for them. And before I knew it, I was working there full time. I'd helped a couple hundred of patients, and I was hiring a team. And over the next few years, I actually hired over 60 medical professions, and I learned this incredible skill set that I never ever thought that I would have the opportunity to do. I was hiring, I learned how to fire, I learned how to manage and motivate a team. I learned how to work with our sales team. I learned how to support customers. I learned how to give presentations. I was completely, out of my comfort zone, and I learned so much because of that opportunity. And after I'd been at the company for a while, I remember thinking, had you asked me a year ago if I would not be working in a hospital and I'd be working in a technology company, I would have said you're crazy. Never in a million years. Maybe I was naive. In San Francisco, it seems like everybody ends up working for a technology company at some point or another. But kidding aside, I don't think that I had ever really opened up my mind to the fact that I could actually impact the world and affect patients in a positive way outside of the hospital walls. And the truth is that opportunity sometimes comes around and doesn't necessarily look like the thing that you thought that it would look like. And if you take that risk, you can actually learn quite a bit from it. So that's my career path so far. But I'd be remiss if I didn't share with you some of the bumps along the way. It hasn't been all roses. And I think that sometimes we don't necessarily talk about how uncomfortable it can feel as as we're going through these growth and development parts of our career. So first of all, I want to share with you that you can be polite and be kind and still stand up for yourself at the same time. You can share your ideas, you can make your voice heard, you can stand up for your patients and still be a nice person. And I really struggled with this. It seems like an obvious thing, but growing up in the Midwest and the culture really was, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And so, coming into my career when I was younger, I remember thinking, I really can't stand up and say something, or I disagree, but they're older than me, or I don't want to correct them in front of somebody. But I think a lot of young women really do feel this way, and you know what? We are right, and we do study hard, and we do know the right answer, and we can stand up for our patients. But we might not always feel empowered to do that. So if you feel that way, I could just recommend a surgical residency. It's a really great way to strengthen your backbone, if you will. Because, working with really intense, demanding surgeons all the time really taught me that it was okay to stand up for myself. And you can do such in a way that you're kind and respectful of others. But those really demanding, smart surgeons expected me to have an opinion. They expected me to know the right answer. They expected me to advocate for my patient when something wasn't being done or wasn't correct for them. And if they expected it of me, why didn't I expect that of myself? They expected me to be kind, but also to be direct. They expected me to correct mistakes. And you know what? It felt really good when I started doing that for myself the first time. But it is something you have to practice. Second, and this is a little bit more uncomfortable for me to share, but I think it's necessary. I feel like an imposter nearly every day. And I think that this is something that so many people feel, especially young women. When I look back at an accomplishment, I always remember thinking, how did I achieve that? How did I get into medical school? How did I match into this competitive surgical residency program? How did I have the opportunity to become an executive at a really successful digital health company? And I think the truth is it's a combination of amazing luck, of hard work, and being genuine and sincere about your goals. But it doesn't always feel that way, and I think it's totally normal to feel like an imposter sometimes. But what I'm trying to remind myself is that I need to counteract that self-doubt and use that as a motivator to continue to learn so that I gain the confidence in my learning. I think this is something that many people, especially young women, really struggle with, but something we don't talk about often enough. And I think a lot of people are just too afraid to tell you that they don't feel like they have it all figured out, or that they don't feel like the expert that somebody else might think them to be. But the phrase, fake it till you make it, is not a famous phrase for nothing. And I think that everyone feels this way, and frankly, people who don't feel this way, at least sometimes, are probably a little bit too overconfident. So if you feel this way, use that self-doubt to motivate your learning, to motivate you to take those risks and those challenges that come your way, and to gain the confidence as you gain those skills and that knowledge. So I hope what I've shared with you today about my journey can empower you as you're along yours. The path to success might not look like what you thought it might look like. There's more than one way to get there. Following your unique passions and the things that really make you excited about your goals will make you unique as you continue along your journey. And also, sometimes those opportunities and the really best learning experiences don't look like what you thought that they would do. Thank you very much.